Hello finance students. We are now in week 6. We're quickly approaching the end of the course. In fact, we're going to have a little break here for the Thanksgiving break, so that'll also give you a little extra time to work on the final week's projects, and eventually we'll have the exam in the last week too. But for this week, you will have for week 6 a brief forum discussion. Kind of an interesting question about the size of banks, I guess the number of banks in the United States, what we think is going to happen in the future. And you have 2 chapters. They're short chapters, chapters 14 and 15, and you'll have some homework problems associated with those chapters. But kind of an overview of these 2 chapters. In chapter 14, we'll look back here. A lot of this chapter is kind of dealing a little bit with figuring out what is the amount of discretionary financing needed. If I'm going to project a pro forma, as my company is growing, I'm probably going to need additional assets to meet the demand. So if I can't generate that internally, I may have to go out and finance it somehow, either by borrowing through the bank or raising your capital in the bond market or the stock market. But on page 394, they kind of give a good example of percent of sales method. It says a method of financial forecasting involves estimating the level of expense, asset, or liability for a future period as a percent of the sales forecast. So it's saying that if I agree that we're going to kind of grow at this rate each year, well, based on the amount of money that I generate, revenues minus costs, leave me profits, what do I have left? If I don't have enough left, I'm going to have to go out and figure out some way to borrow that money and get additional funds. Maybe one more item I wanted to show and point out in this chapter. They could also look at page 397, they look at different scenarios for growth. What if my growth is 0%, 20%, 40%, how much funding will I need? In fact, at a 0% growth rate, I actually have extra money, so I would not have to go out and acquire any monies. And then finally, let's look at the last thing in this chapter 14, kind of give you the idea of like a budget, if you will. And they give on page 402, 14-3, the Salco Furniture cash budget. So it is important that we budget through the year. As individuals, we should all budget. Anticipate we're going to have incoming cash flows, outgoing cash flows, when we're going to short, when we're going to have extra. And if so, for a corporation, the amount to borrow in the short term in order to make sure we can meet any expenses. Our last chapter 15 for this week is kind of the cost of trade credit. It talks a little bit about whether I should be very conservative, stay very short term. If I can stay short term, especially where interest rates are right now, I can really lower my borrowing cost. But if I finance long term, just as you all probably have your house and a 15 or 30-year mortgage as opposed to trying to pay it off in 5 years, well, usually the interest rate is a little bit higher for that. So the trade-off is that I'm not trying to come up with cash every month. But they also measure some of these costs of not taking those terms, in terms of financing. They talk about the cash conversion cycle, the idea we want to try to get our cash in as soon as possible to lower borrowing costs. And especially when we start to get to page 420 all the way through 423, kind of this unsecured trade credit. If I don't take advantage of paying my bill early and get a 2% discount, what is that to me? A true cost on an effective annual cost. So it almost behooves us all the time. If somebody's offering us a discount, say a 2% discount, if we paid in 10 days instead of 30 days, it would behoove us to go ahead and take that discount, because that could be almost a cost of like 36%, as they point out on page 423. But they have some other examples in this chapter, kind of discussion about the cost of these financing. And financing short-term credit can get expensive, so we got to be cautious about that. And it's that kind of that balance between a short-term debt and long-term debt, and what's best for the company to kind of make sure we stay solvent. Well, that's it for this week. So again, if you do have any questions, send me an email, but we'll be skipping a week. It'll be 2 weeks before I'll talk to you again on the video. But again, do send me any emails if you have any questions. Have a great week.